Hello again and welcome to another 140k Mordy and Glory video. In today's episode, we will be continuing our analysis of the Imperial Guard 10th edition index. This time, taking a look at everyone's favourite big lads, the Ogryns. These lovable brutes are the shock troops of the Imperium. But on the tabletop, they've always had a little bit of a mixed history. Sometimes they've been somewhat usable, and other times they've been downright terrible. So the big question is, how do they fare in 10th edition? Well, there's only one way to find out. It's time to stomp them flat and dive right into today's episode. As is tradition, let us begin with an overview of what the hell this unit actually is. In the lore, Ogryns are classed as abhumans. Essentially, they are a sanctioned mutation, a genetic diversion of the regular human form, but one which is considered close enough to humanity or that has come about from natural evolution rather than the malign influence of chaos. In the case of the Ogryns, this is examples where long-lost colonies of humans were cut off from the Imperium, perhaps during the dark age of technology, and they essentially devolved, and they were left on very hostile planets where there was one factor that really determined your survival, and that was brute force. Brains became less important when people just needed to be as strong as possible to survive. There's also other environmental impacts, such as planets that have an incredibly high level of gravity, leading to much stronger muscle development being needed to effectively move around on the planet. And after thousands upon thousands of years of being trapped in this hellish isolation on these death worlds, Ogryns developed. Simple-minded, yet extremely strong. Of course, all of this is in the fluff. What about the crunch? Because Ogryns are meant to act as the primary shock troops of the Imperial Guard. They are meant to allow us to actually engage in melee combat and to use their brutal strength to give us a fighting chance against those armies that like to get up close and personal. Well, let's find out if they're up to the task in the new edition of 40k by diving into their datasheet now. And we'll begin with that stat line. Each Ogryn has a movement value of 6, toughness 6, a 5+ save, 3 wounds, leadership 7, and 1 OC. Now, straight off the bat, we can see this is not a standard guardsman profile. Normally, when I do these stat lines, I essentially say, oh, they've got a normal human profile. Maybe it's a character, they've got a couple of extra wounds, but yeah, then they've got a last pistol chain. So, oh, it's all about the abilities. Ogryns, it's like, no. We are looking at that stat line. So, movement value of 6 is fairly normal. That's what you would expect from almost anything with 2 legs in 40k, unless it's particularly fast and nimble like an Eldar. But the biggie is T6. That is wild. Over the course of many editions, Ogryns have just got tougher and tougher and tougher. I think, and I could be wrong here, any of the Longbeards in the chat, in the channel, let me know down in the comment section. But I believe that back in 3rd and 4th edition, Ogryns were toughness 4. The whole thing was that you had to be an Ogryn to even be anywhere near as tough as a Space Marine. But over the editions, they've gone from toughness 4 to then toughness 5. And now they are T6. That's really important because it's going to mean that a lot of small arms, lasguns, autoguns, and their equivalents are now only going to wound you on 6s. This gives you an extra layer of durability. The best kind of protection is the enemy being unable to wound you. So being toughness 6 protects you against a lot of small arms fire. GSC, a very popular faction at the time of recording this video, they're all about their autoguns and the hand flames. A lot of their firepower, a lot of their mass comes from strength 3 weapons. T6 also protects you against some heavy weapons as well. There are quite a few heavy bolter and heavy bolter equivalents out there in the game. And whereas previously they would have wounded you on 4s, now they wound you on 5s. Again, giving you just more durability against a higher variety of weapon systems. Now, there are quite a few anti-infantry weapons that do come in at strength 6. But being toughness 6 also gives you a modicum of protection against that. When you start getting to anti-infantry weapons that are strength 6, they tend to start having less shots. You're looking at maybe 2 shots or maybe even 1 shot rather than something like heavy bolter, which fires 3. So being toughness 6 is actually quite nice in this regard as well, because it means that when someone goes to shoot you and hit you and wound you with their more powerful anti-infantry weapon, it might get to the wound roll and they've got a 50-50 chance that they've only got 1 dice, and that can swing very wildly. Any Harlequin players that maybe are watching this video, maybe you're sneaking around, you're doing a little dance in the background, I don't know, but anyone who has Harlequins or has played against Harlequins back in editions like 8th and 9th edition will tell you that fusion pistols are great until fusion pistols need to start wounding enemies on force. This is often the case when a troop of Harlequins will come dancing around, try and fusion pistol a Leman Russ in the side and just not roll the 4+s that they needed. Ogryns are like this. That T6 is going to make it so that unless someone really levels some proper firepower against you, until someone brings something like a las cannon, you're actually pretty durable. In fact, until you get to a strength 12 weapon, you are being wounded on 3s. There's a whole spectrum from strength 7 all the way through to strength 11. The enemy's wounding you on 3s. And so again, 3s is fairly reliable, but it's not until you get to the real anti-tank weapons where you can hit Ogryns and you can absolutely super reliably wound them. But on top of this native toughness, they also have 3 wounds. So they are incredibly durable against all small arms, because even if you finally do wound them and they fail a save, then you just take a wound off them and they've still got 2 left. The point I'm trying to make here is, unless you're targeting Ogryns with some proper strong firepower, you're probably not going to be damaging them, and it's probably going to be highly efficient to try and plink wounds off them. However, they do have an Achilles heel, and that is the fact they only have a 5+ armor save and they have no invulnerable save. This means that they are really, really durable until suddenly they're not. Sure, they're going to eat lead and all of the autogun and lasgun rounds are going to bounce off their thick skulls, but when someone does turn that las cannon on you, your Ogryn is just going to get turned into red mist. It's just going to be destroyed. So I tend to find that in a funny sort of way, Ogryns are a bit paradoxical. They feel incredibly tough until suddenly they feel really fragile. But hey, maybe if the Ogryns are eating the las cannon shots and your tanks aren't, that could be counted as a win. However you slice it, Ogryns do have a pretty good stat line. Definitely a step up from the normal fragile infantry that we are forced to use on a more regular basis. But now let's dive into their weapons. So each Ogryn squad consists of 2 to 5 Ogryns and a bonehead. Now it's interesting that GW defined the bonehead, who is essentially the sergeant of the squad, because he doesn't have any separate weapons. He doesn't have any different profile. All Ogryns come with a ripper gun. That's it. And they have no other war gear options. So I think the Ogryn bonehead is just there for legacy's sake more than anything else. Either way, let's dive into the ranged weapons now, and we'll take a look at the Ripper Gun's shooting profile, because the Ogryns can both shoot the Ripper Gun and they can beat people over the head with it. It's got a range profile and a melee profile, which is kind of cool. So the Ripper Gun range profile is 18-inch range, 3 attacks at ballistic skill 4+, strength 5, AP -1, 2 damage. Essentially, each one of these guys is running around with a short-ranged heavy bolter. Now, on its own, that would be very tasty, but it gets absolutely ridiculous when you take into account that the Ripper Gun has a universal special rule. It's a rapid fire weapon. This is a huge change. It used to be an assault weapon, so your Ogryns could move around and shoot it without penalty, and they could advance and still shoot it, but that's gone now. Ripper Guns are no longer assault, but they're rapid fire 3. That means when you are within 9 inches, each Ogryn is putting out the equivalent of 6 heavy bolter shots. And you can take a squad of 6 of these guys. That is 36 heavy bolter shots coming from one squad. That's the potential if, by some miracle, everything hits and everything wounds. The potential for 72 damage from one squad. Now, yeah, of course, all the stars would need to align. Like I said, everything we need to hit and to wound your opponent to fail all their saves. But even if we bring things back down to earth for a moment, we ground ourselves in reality. The fact that you are getting this many shots is very, very impressive. And don't forget that the Lord Solar can order the Ogryns around. Now, we're sort of skipping ahead a little bit into abilities and keywords territory, but just for a moment, it's important to understand that Ogryns can't receive orders from normal officers. They don't have the regiment keyword, but the Lord Solar can order any Astra Militarum unit. So whilst a Commissar or a Caden Castellan will not be able to get through, somehow the Lord Solar is the Ogryn Whisperer and he can order them around. This is important to know because any guard squad that starts receiving orders, receiving buffs and benefits immediately starts becoming more efficient. What I'm saying is Ogryns on their own are quite good. They have the toughness and they have the firepower to already be a legitimate threat in a self-contained ball. They only get better when you start bossing them around. So those Ripper guns may start off at ballistic skill 4+ with 3 shots each, but you get them into rapid fire range. You order them to take aim. You have a Scout Sentinel who does daring recon. Suddenly, you've got a unit that has gone from 3 shots BS4+ to 6 shots, ballistic skill 3+, and with reroll 1s thrown into the mix as well. Little side note here in regards to orders. I personally believe Take Aim is the strongest order that guard has right now, but it would be remiss of me not to point out the fact that these are rapid fire guns, and so technically they can benefit from the first rank fire, second rank fire order. Just from like an imagery point of view, that is hilarious. Having the Ogryns start like ranking up and volley firing is just brilliant. But the in-game impact of that would be you would actually get an extra shot from each of your Ogryns. So they'd go from doing 36 shots at rapid fire range in a big squad to up to 42. So you kind of have to pick, do you want those 36 shots to be good, or are you just focused on pure Daka output? But now let's move on to the melee weapon profile of the Ripper gun, because at least in theory, Ogryns are to be considered melee shock troops. When used in combat, the Ripper gun will give the Ogryn 4 attacks at weapon skill 3+ at strength 6, which is actually better in combat than it is in shooting in terms of strength, and then also AP -1 but only 1 damage. Essentially, what you're doing is you're trading for 1 extra attack up front, 1 extra weapon skill, and 1 extra strength, but you're reducing your damage by 1. The Ripper gun is a very good weapon. How I think it's best used is you give the enemy a volley, you shatter them with the ranged weapon, and then you finish them off with the melee. But this is kind of telling of how Ogryns have evolved. They've gone from being a bit of shooting, mostly combat, to now I feel it's the other way around. Now I feel like they're mostly a shooting unit. And the combat profile that they have is either good for killing chaff, or it's good for finishing off a more durable unit. Ogryns will wade through rank upon rank of termagants, rank upon rank of cultists, rank upon rank of guardsmen equivalent. But when it comes to actually like fighting like Marines in combat, because they're only damage 1, even if you get a whole bunch of wounds on the enemy, they're going to have a 4-up save, which is going to halve the amount of damage you do. And then those wounds that do get through, it's going to take 2 each time to kill a Marine. So I really feel like Ogryns have kind of morphed into a close range, really brutal anti-infantry unit. But most of their power doesn't come from close combat, it comes from point blank firepower. But wait, there's more, because this is 10th. and every unit has abilities, and the Ogryns are no exceptions, and they're pretty good. Straight off the bat, they have a core universal special rule, Feel No Pain 6+. This is quite nice. It goes some way to mitigating the problems we spoke about earlier about how Ogryns kind of collapse when they come under really proper, dedicated, heavy firepower. Having that 6+ Feel No Pain combined with 3 wounds means there will be times when someone hits you with a particularly powerful weapon, but you just manage to roll a 6 or 2 at the right moment, and instead of your Ogryn dying, he lives on 1 wound. Maybe it takes 2 battle cannon shells to kill them rather than 1. Maybe it takes 2 las cannons or autocannons shots rather than 1. So the Feel No Pain is good, but always remember when it comes to fishing for 6s, it's not a reliable strategy, and it's not something that you should be factoring into guaranteeing happening. I've played games where 6s have been flowing, and I've played games where I've been fishing for 6s the whole time and not 1 turned up. That's why I call it a nice to have, but it's not reliable. Ogryns also have a unique ability called Point Blank Barrage, and this is tasty. Each time a model in this unit makes a ranged attack that targets the closest eligible target, improve the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 1. Yes. 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 Oh. This is really nice because in 10th edition, there is cover. There's a lot of cover. And the benefit of cover, essentially, in many instances, just negates AP -1. Just completely negates it. But if you have Point Blank Barrage, you don't need to be in half range. Interestingly, I thought it would be limited to if you're in half range, you get the extra AP. But no, you can be 18 inches away from an enemy unit, but as long as that unit is the closest one, you get the extra AP. This is just awesome. It helps Ogryns just cut through terrain. It helps them just get their damage across. It helps them translate it into real world enemy models lost. And it starts getting even wackier if you think about combining Ogryns with Hellhounds, which remove enemy cover. Suddenly those Marines have gone from a 3 up to a 5 up. That damage 2, every time they fail 1, they're just losing a guy. It's tasty. You can combine with Hellhounds, like I said, and that does make it really good, but I would not overlook the fact that it allows the Ogryns to be quite self-contained. They don't need a Hellhound. They don't need a Scout Sentinel. They don't need a Lord Solar. They have firepower to get the job done. They can Barney in close combat. They're all right on their own. But when you do support them, they get exponentially better. But if that support is needed elsewhere, if that Lord Solar needs to order a tank rather than the Ogryns, not the end of the world. And that, my little conscripts, pretty much wraps up the datasheet for the Ogryns. But there is one last thing we need to talk about. Possibly one of the most important things. One of the things which is making Ogryn a very viable unit right now, which is their points costs. They're coming in at a bargain price point of 25 points per model. This is wildly cheap, considering how much improved the Ogryns profile is, with the better strength and toughness and weapon profiles and the new abilities. 25 points is a bargain. It makes them very cheap and very affordable, and it means you can afford to take a chance on them. Take a risk. Include a unit, maybe a 3, maybe a 6. You can do it, and it's not going to break the bank. It's going to cost you less to take a punt on a unit of 6 Ogryns than it would be to get the cheapest Leman Russ variety. And I don't know about you, but I honestly think that well supported with something like a Lord Solar, which you'll probably be taking anyway, a unit of Ogryns is going to be way more effective than a Leman Russ Eradicator. If I was to hazard a guess at why Games Workshop has priced them so low, it's because they have 0 anti-tank capability. Even in combat, they're not going to do anything but scratch the paint of tanks, and they're barely going to be able to wound them, and even when they do, they're only going to be doing like 1 or 2 damage at a time. So perhaps with 10th edition becoming more focused on vehicles and more people cottoning on to this fact and the meta evolving, the Ogryns look good now, but their usefulness may drop off in the future. But of course, all of that is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Do you think that Ogryns are a top tier choice for the guard right now? Or do you think that their lack of anti-tank really holds them back? Of course, if you've enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button and of course subscribe to never miss an episode. And I just want to say, if you found today's video particularly helpful or informative, then please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. By supporting the channel, you will not only be helping me create more content, but unlocking loads of perks for yourself, including access to the Mordian Glory Discord server. This is an online community with over 2,000 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We have got channels for army lists, tactics, hobbying, painting, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. And I just want to take a moment to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. You truly are the lifeblood of this channel, and I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without your generous support. And last, but certainly not least, I want to say a personal, special, heartfelt thank you to all of my top tier supporters. These are the War Masters, the people that have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a massive thank you to Bon Vert, Ken Starr, Mark Panconi, Swordfish Trombone, John Stubbs, Nicholas Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Thank you guys. Your ongoing and incredibly generous support makes a huge difference, and I am eternally grateful to each and every single one of you. I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.